Hello everyone, and welcome to the BME Life. Today we have a very exciting podcast, and we're going to be talking about how to negotiate your salary and promotions as women in STEM specifically, but of course applies to anyone. But here to speak to us about this topic is Kristen Mittal. She is a biomedical engineer, regulatory expert, and also owner of Mittal Consulting. So, Kristen, thank you so much for being with us today, and we're really looking forward to just learning from you.
Of course, yeah, happy to be here and happy to share some information. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Kristen, would you like to start us off by maybe giving us a little bit of background on yourself and your business?
Yeah, sure. So I originally graduated in biomedical engineering, just like yourself, way back when. And for the last 10 years, I've been in regulatory affairs, and I've been loving it. Been working at all sizes of companies, small, medium, and large, Fortune 500s. And 3 years ago, I actually opened my own consulting business for regulatory affairs. It's called Mittal Consulting. And so we've got a team of experts who can do basically all types of regulatory submissions here in the US, the EU, globally. And we've got extra expertise on class 3 implantables as well.
Awesome. If there's anyone watching interested in that, make sure to reach out to Kristen. But yeah, today's topic will be focused on negotiating salary and promotions, which is something that really applies to almost every person on this planet. It's something that we go through a lot. And, here in the BME Life, we're trying to help students and young professionals have a successful career, specifically in the biomedical engineering field or in STEM. And just personally, it's a topic that I've struggled with ever since I did my first internship. I think, it's like it's always been in the back of my mind, like the idea of negotiating salary. I feel like it's something that you hear about and it makes sense logically, but at the same time, emotionally, it's such an like
Yeah.
scary topic and thing
Uh,
to do,
It's
right? And
especially hard for women because, we're not trained, we haven't had practice in it before, and maybe we're not as encouraged in the past. So it's definitely an acquired skill that you just have to practice to get better at.
yes, no, totally agree. And I shared with you before our conversation today that I I think I've had maybe like 3 or 4 jobs in my career so far, and it really wasn't until recently that I finally decided that I would actually do it. But before then, it's like I didn't. I knew and I considered it, but it was just so scary. So yeah, just really looking forward to learning from you and what you think, people should do and how to get started with this. So I guess the first point is someone who's fresh out of college. What would you tell to them in regards to negotiating a first salary?
Yeah, so if they're fresh out of college and they got their first job, well, first of all, congratulations. That's a big thing to get your first job offer. And that's very exciting. And I'm sure very nervous too, trying out something new, get going away from college. But one thing I would say is definitely negotiate. So they're expecting when they give you their first number, they're expecting that you're going to negotiate. So that's kind of part of the reason why they give you the number they do. So things you can do is go to like Glassdoor or Payscale or other places and kind of see what is an appropriate pay for that type of position,
Mhm.
and see if you're in the range. And then still, even then, negotiate. So try a little bit higher, maybe 5% higher or something. So whatever you're comfortable with. And I promise you, they'll probably have more respect for you for negotiating, because it shows that you have self-worth and you value what you're bringing to the company and that you feel you deserve a higher salary. So, I mean, all those are really good things. Those are strong things to see in a candidate.
Yeah, of course. And I think you're also in a way like setting yourself up for better success if you start at a higher level. I was actually watching a video just kind of like compound interest kind of thing, like
Yeah.
the higher you start, then in 10 years you'll actually have earned more.
Yes.
So
And that's
it
the thing about discrepancy between men and women's salaries in the industry is even if a woman, asks every single year for a higher salary, oftentimes they're still lower after 10 years from a man's salary just because the starting point was different. So you really want to like have the same starting point, have it be even so that you can make the same strides upwards along with your colleagues.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I was wondering because this is definitely a question that I've encountered myself. And is there like a magic like stage from when you first start interviewing to where when you actually get the job offer? Like, should you be talking about salary before you even get the offer, or should you not bring it up until you get the offer? What's your point of view on this?
Yeah, it definitely depends like at what stage you're at, if you're a new graduate. So for new graduates, a lot of companies have more fixed salaries that they're going to offer. But as you go up in your career, it may be more flexible and much more negotiable. One thing I really like to do is ask the recruiter, like at the beginning, because they'll ask you, right, at the beginning,
Mhm.
what's your expected salary, just to see if you're kind of in the right range as well. One thing I like to do is flip it back and say, well, what's the expected pay range for this position? What's the range?
Mhm.
And oftentimes they will tell you. So that gives you an idea of kind of where the company's at as well.
Yeah.
So you can see if it's a good fit. Um, so yeah, it really depends on the company and the situation and how you feel about it. But definitely flipping it back and kind of then seeing where you might fit in their range as well.
So, do you think that people like if the company gives you a range, what should your response be to that?
Well, okay, first of all, you have to think, is that a range that I'm comfortable with? And if it's a range that you are comfortable with, then say, yeah, somewhere in that range would work for me. Other things, I mean, the interview process goes both ways. So you have to see if the job description and fit is really good for you as well. So it really depends on a lot of things, which you'll only learn later on, which would be the people you're working with, the job description, responsibilities, and that can only you can really figure out as you get further along and talk with the actual hiring manager. So you can kind of, defer to that type of things as well. And that's perfectly okay because those are, things you have to figure out and then make an informed decision based off of that.
No, that definitely makes sense. And how about, like if someone asks for a higher salary, like if I do negotiate a higher salary and the employer basically says no, like we can't really do that, or we don't really think you're quite there yet. Do you think that's a red flag, or do you think that's okay and that you should consider that still?
Yeah, so the other thing with negotiating is you have to become really comfortable with no. So you will hear no, and it could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be that they have fixed salaries at certain levels and positions, or it could be, they're going through a tough year and they just
Mhm.
can't offer you as much that year. Who knows what the reason is? But you have to get comfortable with no. No is no in the moment. It's not no forever. Once if you like the position and the salary still seems reasonable to you and you join the company, I mean, who knows what could happen the next year or the following year. So even if you receive no, one really important thing is, I mean, to be professional, of course, through the whole process and be respectful of everyone's time. And I mean, the fact that they gave you an offer means they want you
Mhm.
and they're really
Yes.
excited about you. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given you an offer to begin with. So I mean, overall, that's a good thing. But if you do get a no, one other thing you can do is think about other intangible types of things that might be important to you, like an extra vacation day or a delayed start date, so you can go on some other vacation before you start, or things like relocation packages. Pick one that's actually important to you. Don't be going all over the place. But if there is something like that that's important, you can counter with that and say, hey, I understand you're not really flexible on the salary for whatever reason, and that's okay, but would you consider X, Y, or Z instead? Um, so that's also a possibility as well of something you could do if there's something like that that's important to you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And sometimes maybe a company might actually offer a higher salary, but then you realize that the benefits are not quite there either. So that's also something that we should also always be considering, like make sure we know what the medical benefits or any kind of benefits are, because that even though one offer might look better, it might actually in the long run not really be better.
Yep.
So yeah, all things to consider. And one thing I was wondering if you have any thoughts on is that maybe we should also be more like ask future employers or potential employers what the possibilities of promotions are in the future, because I don't know, like I feel like maybe some companies don't have a structured way that they go about this, and then others do. And really understanding what can I expect from them in the future if I'm not getting a no right now. Okay, what can I expect from you as far as like promotions and raises in the future?
That's a great question to have at the beginning, the middle, the end, throughout the entire process, because that's really important too. I mean, you want to see that you have a long-term future at the company. You
Yeah.
don't like you want it to be a good fit for the long term.
Yeah, for sure. And companies also want you to stay in the long term. Like no company, no employer wants you to just be there for a year. So yes, you just want to make sure that in the long term it works for everyone. And I'm sure that, they should be willing to talk about this. Um, but yeah, I guess let's now talk about y- someone who's been at a company for a while now, and whether they were able to negotiate the salary in the beginning or not. Next step is the promotion, which is something that I feel there's less conversation about. I feel like we hear more about how to negotiate a salary, but once you're there, what does your future in that company look like?
Right, right. Yeah. So the first thing is do good work when you're at the company. If you do good work, it makes all future conversations much easier. If you do work that's important to the company and meets their metrics on time or before time, you do a large volume of work. I mean, then they have a very large incentive to have these conversations with you because you're a great employee. So that then makes everything easier. That's primary.
Mhm.
But yes, you should be advocating for yourself for promotions. So of course it varies for company to company. Every company is different, but really the best advocate for you is yourself in the end. So one thing I really like to do when I was at different companies is kind of keep a log throughout the year of all the work that I did do. I mean, of course, my managers would as well, but really, I mean, it's my responsibility because I'm the one who's asking for the promotion, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so keep a log, just some sort of Word document on your desktop or something of each project you complete, how long it took. Try to put it in metrics that upper management would be think important. So like, did you get it above time? Did you deliver it early? Did it save the company some amount of money? Things like that are really important to upper management, and that's very persuasive as well to show your value. So keep all of that. And then also throughout the year, have conversations with your manager about what type of growth you'd like to see at the company. So show that you're interested, right? Because if you don't have the conversation, they may not even know. If you have the conversation at the end of the year, they may be completely surprised. Like, oh, I didn't even know you wanted to go exceed and go to this new level, you know?
Yeah.
So let them know from the beginning in a very, professional and respectful manner, and ask them, say, hey, this is kind of where I want to go, or this is what I want to see in the next couple of years. What do I need to get there? Throw it back on them. So maybe they know that there are certain steps you need to do before you can get that raise or that promotion. Maybe it's a certification, or you have to do a certain type of project, or you have to go to a type of training, whatever
Mhm.
it is. But if you start having those conversations early, they'll start thinking about it. And then when that special project comes along, they might give it to you. So
Mhm.
then again, something like that makes it easier for you to basically earn your promotion or earn your raise at the end of the year.
Yeah.
One thing, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just gonna kind of reemphasize what you were saying, that, those two things of like, one, just like keeping track of your achievements, because they're really going to be your evidence for why you deserve this promotion or this raise. And I'm glad you mentioned like just keep track of everything you do like for that year, because I was going to ask you like, is that something like keeping track of achievements? Like, is that something that you should always be doing, or is it something that you don't really need to worry about until like a month before the planned evaluation is? But, of course, I agree that it's better to just like always be like keep track of things, and maybe you just start making everything concrete towards, once it's getting closer. And then that other point of like that you should be having these conversations all the time, just to one, I guess like prepare them psychologically that you will be asking for a promotion, or a raise. And then another thing is also to benefit you is to learn from them. What is it that I have to do, and or that would merit like me getting a promotion or a raise? And if you have those like specifics, I actually worked at a company that I remember them saying, oh, like for you to go to the next level promotion, like we would like to see you become like like an auditor for our ISO audits. Like once you get there, like so like they had specific ideas of what would merit a promotion, which I never even thought about, but after they mentioned it, then you make it a goal. So yeah, definitely agree with those 2 points.
Yeah, and if you're having these regular conversations with your manager and kind of, going through the boxes and checking them, it should be clear to both of you if you earned it at the end of the
Yeah.
year or not. It shouldn't be like this sudden surprise.
Yes, totally agree. And, like what is there like a specific when it comes to, I guess, the race, monetary race, is there like a specific percentage that you think the average person should be asking for? Like, for example, I know inflation is something that we're always dealing with. We're always going to deal with it. So, do you think that you should always expect some sort of raise to at least cover the inflation portion, or not really? And if so, what is that magic number?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess you shouldn't expect it, but you should always ask for it. So that's the difference. So, yes, inflation always goes up, and so that always makes your salary actually less valuable as years go on if it doesn't increase as well. So I would definitely say every single year, make it a goal for yourself to always ask for some sort of raise, just because inflation also always keeps going up as well, just to keep in line with that. It, of course, depends industry to industry and company to company, but I would say at least aim for 5 to 10%. Somewhere in there is a good starting point to think about. Obviously, research it for your company and see what's reasonable. And ask. If you don't get it, also be professional. Don't be offended. There could be a lot of reasons why you didn't get it. If you asked the first year and you didn't get it, it may just be because they weren't expecting you to ask, so they didn't put it in the budget. And the budgets, are calculated many months before these, annual reviews are conducted. But if you ask the first year, it's quite probable that when you ask the subsequent year, you will probably get what you asked for. So just if you start asking, they'll start thinking about you more, right? Because
Yeah.
as you like, what I always like to do is I always like to take all the achievements that I had throughout the year, all the things that I did, put them together in a PowerPoint presentation, and then kind of say, hey, this is kind of what I did throughout the year. This is why I think I deserve whatever I'm asking for, and give, a real presentation to my manager or my manager's manager, depending on however it worked out that year, and be professional about it. Something like that, they can then send to the upper management, to defend you as well. Because of course, if they like you, they're going to say nice things about you, but every manager is going to say nice things about their employees. So if you can give them actual concrete evidence of here's why it makes sense, that makes their job easier too, because it's not just them. I'm sure every manager would be like, yes, promotions for everyone, raises for,
Yeah.
but it has to be defendable all the way up, and you want to have these conversations be had about you because then more people in the company will get to know about you. It's just a good thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one topic that I've heard of sometimes being brought up is the idea of like shopping for another job and using other offers to kind of leverage a promotion or a raise within your current company. Do you think that's a good idea, or does it look kind of like not loyal that you're looking around, or what are your thoughts on
I mean, yeah, you can definitely do that, and people do. But what I've often seen is when people employ that method, they're generally not at the company much longer because
that?
now you've taken it, it's no longer a professional relationship. Now it's like, you do this or I'll leave. It's a very different, it's a very different dynamic now.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely damages your image at the company. It's something you can do, but it's probably not helpful for you long term.
I guess now we can discuss the next step, or the idea that maybe they don't accept a promotion or they don't accept a raise for you, or something like that. What do you do then? Like, do you just accept your fate, accept that you're always gonna have a low salary, or what can you do in that instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've been at a company for a couple years and the company's vision and your vision of where you see yourself going aren't aligning, or there's some other issues, like this is the 21st century. People don't stay in their same jobs for an entire lifetime. It's very common to go to a new job and have new experiences. So that's why I also say like definitely just stay active on LinkedIn as well, even if you're really happy at your current job, just because that gives you, because things change at jobs, like they can get acquired, management can change, all sorts of things that were unpredicted can suddenly happen to make it maybe not the environment you were used to or enjoyed before. So always keep yourself competitive because there's tons of companies out there. There's tons of places you can go. So by staying active on LinkedIn and meeting people and networking and building your connections is really helpful for you long term as well.
Yeah, and I really like that you mentioned LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is really such a powerful tool that we get to have nowadays. One of the things that we always push for in this channel is that networking really is one of your biggest tools that you can use to be successful in your career, because you never know who could open that next door for you. And
Yeah.
something that I think when I was a student, like in barely created my LinkedIn profile, I would add connections, but I wouldn't really do anything with that. Like, I would just add people just to have them. And I think one important thing too is to not just add connections, but also kind of reach out to them and, introduce yourself and kind of try to grow your network that way. Not just by adding someone as a connection is not really enough. Like, you have to at least say hi, at least say, hi, here I am, this is me. And funny enough, my first regulatory job was actually because of, well, not because of LinkedIn, but I used LinkedIn as a tool to get to someone, and I was like, hey, like, I'm interested in regulatory. I I found you and your company online and just wanted to reach out, see if there's, any openings, or if I could
I've
learn from
had that
you.
same experience multiple times. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, right there, it's like evidence that LinkedIn really is such a, like, there's no excuse. Like, because of the pandemic, like, I heard a lot of students like would reach out to us and be like, hey, like, there's, because of the pandemic, like, everything's going virtual now and there's not enough networking events. And I'm like, you don't need, I mean, they're good, they're nice, but like LinkedIn is right there. Like you can literally be on your PJs in bed messaging people. Like there's no excuse to not grow your network. So totally agree with you that that's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, and there's two parts to that. So yes, making a lot of connections is really important because you should definitely go and look. There's different spheres. There's like first degree, second degree, and third degree connections. So the more connections, if you don't have many connections, it's actually hard to see other people who you may be interested in. So by increasing your number of connections, you can actually see more connections in your field and other jobs in your field, which you may have had blinders onto before. So that's the first part. But yes, the second part is equally important, is actually making those connections. So when people reach out to me and have genuine messages that they're interested in regulatory, I love to talk with them about it. Like, I'm passionate about regulatory, so those are my favorite conversations. And I've reached out over the years, before I started my business, of other people who had started businesses and kind of asked them what it's like and getting their advice. And they were super helpful, and I'm very grateful to them because they gave me like the information I needed then go and build my own business. So I mean, there's definitely a lot of people out there who are willing to help you. Like if you just say hello and introduce yourself, and the people who don't message back, well, whatever, move on. It's okay. Like it's no offense, right?
Yes, no, it's totally better than the real life counterpart of like maybe saying hi to someone and them ignoring you. Like it's not really like if they ignore your message,
It's
no
like,
big deal.
oh wow, like someone else will reply and they'll be, really nice and helpful. So
Yes. Totally agree. And yeah, like you said, like you're willing to talk to anyone about, regulatory specifically. I think there's a lot of people out there too that are very happy to just meet with you over Zoom and talk to you, see how they could help. Maybe they are not necessarily hiring, but they could tell you more about their job and just share and, you know, there'll be another network. There'll be an addition to your real network, not just like your count of like how many people you have. But yeah, no, I think those are all great tips. And I guess now we're reaching the Q&A session and just have a few questions for you.
sure.
Um, one of them is, well, we kind of already talked about this, but if a recruiter or hiring manager asks, what are your salary expectations? Your advice was to kind of flip it on them and, you know, ask if they have a kind of salary that they're willing to give. Um,
Yeah.
have you ever experienced a situation where they say, no, we don't have a salary to give, like if they push back and want you to say the number first. Like, have you ever experienced that, or do you always just find that they actually tell you?
Absolutely. Yeah, many times they won't tell because they may not know
Yeah.
also. So, I mean, if you've done your research, you should know kind of what the appropriate salary should be. If you want to tell them, you can. If you don't want to tell them for whatever reason, you can, flip the answer and also say, hey, I mean, once I know more about the responsibilities and what the position is like, then I would want a competitive, salary for that
Mhm.
type of role. So you don't have to answer, like fully answer all the questions. I mean, something like that is at the beginning is kind of silly, I think, to ask because you don't have all the information yet.
Right.
Uh, so if it's a very, very demanding position, you may, factor that in and say a couple thousand more is required based off of that. I mean, you don't know yet because if they're asking at the first, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That makes a lot of sense. And do you think there's a like an ideal format for how like whether it should be done through email or in a call or video call? Like, is there like an ideal or optimal way that you should be having the conversation or the final negotiation for a salary?
Yeah, when you haven't started the company yet and you've just received an offer, I mean, it really depends however they're most comfortable with communicating. So if you normally communicate over email or phone, do whatever is comfortable for them. I mean, Obviously, phone is always the best because it's much less likely to have misinterpretations. But if you can't get them on the phone, I mean, that's also not an option. But one thing I would say is that once you are at a company and you are asking for a raise or promotion, definitely schedule an actual meeting to have your request. Don't do it over email. Email is super unprofessional. Like, I mean, be respectful of them by presenting yourself and making it, legitimate, a full meeting, some sort of presentation, explain why. That's much more professional way to go about it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the last question, it's not really a question, it's just something like a cool little tip that I saw online that I thought was interesting and wanted to ask you if you have any thoughts on this. Is I saw that you should never ask for like a round number or like pretty number salary. Like for example, if it's like 55K or like 60K, like you should always try to give like a more randomized number that maybe you either saw online or instead of saying 50 just say 51 or something like that, because it just gives the impression that you did more research and like your specific market values. Do you have any thoughts on this? Have you experienced
Yeah, I
anything?
mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. Definitely, you want to show that you didn't just make up the number on the spot. And I think that's what the point of the article is trying to show. As you go up, maybe it doesn't make such a difference. Like you don't have to do it to the 1,099%. Oh, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, totally.
any way you can show that whatever number you're representing is backed up by research or data, or it is
Yeah.
actually the competitive number, is a good thing. Because, I mean, you want to show that you value yourself and you want to be priced at whatever the competitive rate is.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Awesome. Well, I think we're nearing the end of this conversation. I wanted to know, is there any final piece of advice that you'd like to share with someone that is either negotiating a salary or already has a job, and the annual evaluation is coming up and they need to figure out a way to ask for a promotion raise? Do you have any advice for any of those people? Just final thoughts.
My final thought is, if you haven't done it before, it's going to be very uncomfortable, especially for women, to ask for a increase, a raise, a promotion, whatever. It's very uncomfortable. It was even very uncomfortable for me when I started. I would practice for hours the night before and so scared. But it's okay. I mean, that is part of being in the industry. Just become comfortable with it. And I promise if you do it 2 or 3 or 4 times, it will get less painful each time, so that it's not such a big deal. And it's really important, especially I want to say for women, just so that we can, get the pay gap decreased and have men and women have equal salaries. And of course, it's both the employer burden and the employee burden, but advocate for yourself, because that's not just for you, that's for all women coming after you as well. It's your job as well to advocate for yourself to continue to have the same pay as your colleagues who are doing the same work.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And again, I just like to remind people that there's nothing bad will happen if you ask for a salary, even if they say no. And like Kristen said, be okay with a no. You can always negotiate in the future. But yeah, I think that's all, Kristen. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you talking to us about your tips for negotiating salary and promotions. I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. So really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed talking with you. And I'm on LinkedIn, of course. So if anyone has questions or wants to reach out, please feel free to do so.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll put your LinkedIn information in the description box, and we'll also share your website to the Mittal Consulting. So yeah, thank you again so much, and we'll talk soon.